Good evening, friends. Welcome to Historian's Lullaby. I'm trying an experiment with this video by using my own voice instead of one generated by AI. If you prefer a human voice to an AI voice, please let me know in the comments. Tonight, by the crackling of the fire, we bring a modern flair to our channel with a biography of the infamous Jeffrey Epstein. We all know how it ended for him, but let's take a look at his life before he was known for his criminal deeds, and let's meet the people who helped him along the way. Finally, let's explore why some people today believe that Epstein's sudden demise was tied to his relations with Mossad, Israel's largest intelligence agency. As we set sail into the restful arms of dreams, let's uncover the shadowy backstory of Jeffrey Epstein. Let's begin now. Brooklyn, 1953. A neighborhood tucked behind beaten boardwalks and the ocean's edge. There, in a working-class enclave called Seagate, Jeffrey Epstein took his first breath. This is where our story begins. Before the headlines, before the scandal, in the shadowy realms of childhood. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, into modesty and quiet routine. His parents, Seymour and Pauline Epstein, were Jewish, married just before his birth. Seymour, the groundskeeper for New York City's Department of Parks and Recreation, and Paula, a school aide, managed to build a home filled with kindness, despite limited means. A classmate later recalled, Paula was a wonderful mother and homekeeper, despite the fact that she had a full-time job. This suburban sanctuary stood within Seagate, Coney Island, a gated residential community known for its low-profile daytime tranquility and sharp socioeconomic contrasts. Seagate was among the first private gated communities in New York City, established in 1892 as an exclusive summer destination for affluent families. By the 1950s, it had evolved into a year-round residential neighborhood, but it retained its distinctive private identity. Surrounded on three sides by water, Seagate was both physically and symbolically set apart. Access was, and still is, restricted by gate guards, lending the neighborhood a quiet, suburban air in the middle of a bustling city. Unlike the rest of Coney Island, with its amusement parks, honky-tonk attractions, and packed boardwalks, Seagate in the 1950s was a place of detachment. The roads were narrow, lined with modest homes and larger Victorian mansions, some left over from its Gilded Age heyday. Most families were working or middle class, many Jewish, and many seeking respite from the tougher neighborhoods that surrounded them. Life was slower, safer, and more predictable in Seagate, a bubble in a city experiencing rapid post-war change. In the early 1950s, around the time Jeffrey Epstein was born, the atmosphere in Seagate reflected post-war optimism, modest prosperity, and conservatism. Children rode bicycles through quiet streets and played stickball in alleys. Fathers commuted by subway or bus to jobs in Manhattan or other parts of Brooklyn. Mothers often worked as homemakers or part-time workers in schools and offices. Though modestly populated, Seagate maintained a tight-knit community. residents knew each other by name. There were community events, local synagogues, and a small beach club. Neighbors remembered the Epstein family as so gentle, the most gentle people. They called young Jeffrey Bear, while his younger brother Mark was Puggy. Bear perhaps capturing his childhood presence, sturdy, soft-spoken, yet unforgettable. Seagate's existence was dual-natured, both insular and insulating. It provided security from the bustle of Brooklyn, but it also had its own unique pressures. For Jeffrey, who was slightly overweight, freckled, and nicknamed Epi, the neighborhood was a cocoon, safe, predictable, and small. Classmates described him as sweet and generous, yet quiet and nerdy, particularly brilliant in math. He'd greet you with a shy smile and quietly help classmates with algebra problems for a few coins. Neighbors saw no signs of darkness. One recollected he showed no signs of predatory behavior during high school. But even in the calmest neighborhoods, a few odd shadows can tell a deeper tale. Before that quiet facade was remarkable early achievement. Epstein was both mathematically gifted and musically inclined. Starting piano at age 5, he was gifted enough to attend the National Music Camp at Interlochen, a prestigious summer arts academy. That kind of access was rare for a neighborhood teen. He finished Lafayette High School at just 16, after skipping 2 grades. That put him into early adulthood while he was still under his father's roof. From there, he entered Cooper Union, covering advanced math. Then, in 1971, he switched to NYU's Courant Institute, studying mathematical physiology, a field few even knew existed. Yet, he left without a degree in 1974. What pushed him from the scholarly path? The answer may lie in what comes next. Barely out of college, Epstein began teaching advanced physics and math at Dalton, an elite Manhattan private school. His youth, charm, and academic edge made him memorable, flamboyantly dressed, confident, and witty. But at Dalton, we also see the personality seeds that would one day blossom into one of the most notorious men in American history. While teaching at Dalton, Epstein reportedly exhibited disturbing behavior toward female students. Former classmates recall him lavishing underage girls with excessive attention, flirting in the hallways, making suggestive comments, and even appearing at student parties where alcohol was present. His behavior raised eyebrows, but he continued to ingratiate himself with the school's elite. One of those connections was Alan Greenberg, the CEO of Bear Stearns, whose children were enrolled at Dalton. According to Greenberg's daughter, Lynn Copel, Epstein was shrewd enough to convince another parent at a conference to speak favorably about him to her father. That subtle manipulation paid off. Although Epstein was ultimately dismissed from Dalton in June 1976 for poor performance, Greenberg saw something in him and offered him a position at Bear Stearns shortly after. Jeffrey Epstein's trajectory from education to finance is one of the most pronounced turning points in his biography, a pivot that begins in the halls of Manhattan's Dalton School and landed firmly on the trading floors of Bear Stearns. At Bear, Epstein started as a junior assistant to a floor trader and quickly ascended. His mathematical acumen earned him a place in the special products desk, where he advised wealthy clients on tax-efficient strategies. By 1980, Epstein had become a limited partner, a rare achievement for someone with no degree. Behind Epstein's Wall Street debut was Alan Greenberg, Bear Stearns' CEO from 1978 to 1993, and later chairman. He was known for hiring individuals he termed PSDs, those perceived as poor, smart, and deserving of wealth, regardless of their formal credentials. Epstein fit that mold. Greenberg's leadership style privileged stealth, innovation, and loyalty at Bear, qualities Epstein proved adept at mirroring. Epstein's rise in options trading and tax strategy aligned well with the bank's push into new, complex financial products. Despite his meteoric rise, Epstein's tenure at Bear Stearns ended abruptly in 1981. He reportedly violated SEC Regulatory Rule D, though details remain murky. Reports and deposition records indicate the issue involved Epstein lending $20,000 to a friend to purchase stock, potentially constituting a private securities transaction that disqualified for Reg G exemption. Bear Stearns fined him $2,500, after which he resigned. The type of Reg D violation suggests Epstein may have participated in unregistered or improperly executed securities activity, a breach of federal exemption rules. Whether it was an innocent personal loan or an intentional sidestep, the incident spotlighted Epstein's early proximity to financial gray areas, setting the tone for speculation about his later shadowy pursuits. Despite the expulsion, Epstein maintained a relationship with former colleagues like Greenberg and James Kane. Notably, Epstein stayed a client of Bear until its collapse in 2008. Bear Stearns was Epstein's springboard, not just into high net worth circles, but into the few known connections that fed much speculation about his uncanny financial ascent. After leaving Bear, Epstein founded Intercontinental Assets Group, a New York-based money management firm embedded in mystery. His biggest client became Les Wexner, billionaire founder of Limited Brands and Victoria's Secret, a relationship described as profoundly influential. Wexner granted Epstein power of attorney in the early 90s, allowing him to manage Wexner's properties and finances with expensive authority. But perhaps Epstein's most important relationship began in the early 1990s, when he met Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of publishing giant Robert Maxwell. We will get to Ghislaine in a moment, for our story of secrecy and espionage requires that we first look into Robert Maxwell and his possible ties to Israel's primary intelligence agency, Mossad. Robert Maxwell had built a fortune for himself. Perhaps he was looking for the next challenge to conquer. And maybe that challenge was found in the world of shadowy governments and secret spy operations. Imagine a man born to Jewish farm laborers in Czechoslovakia who escaped Nazi-occupied Europe, joined Allied forces, and later rose to become one of the most flamboyant media barons of his era. That man was Robert Maxwell, a towering figure with a global empire a swashbuckling lifestyle, and, some claim, a secret life as one of Mossad's most elusive assets. Let's dive into the rumors, the allegations, and the half-whispered intelligence stories to explore whether Maxwell was a publisher or something far more covert. In the nexus of Israel's nascent statehood and Cold War geopolitics, Czechoslovakia played a pivotal role in arming Israel during the seminal 1948 Arab-Israeli War. According to intelligence investigators John Loftus and Mark Aarons, Maxwell's clandestine efforts were instrumental. He allegedly helped shuttle aircraft parts to Israel, enabling its air dominance. This early brush with covert logistics, not just business, set the stage for Maxwell's whispered ascension into the orbit of Mossad. Fast forward to the 1980s, into the heart of international software espionage. A company called Inslaw Incorporated developed software called Prosecutors Management Information System, otherwise known as PROMIS, for prosecutors to use in their court cases. But the software's potential went beyond the courtroom. Some allege it was turned into PROMIS Plus, a Trojan horse intelligence system. According to whistleblowers like Ari Ben-Menashe and investigative writers Gordon Thomas and Martin Dillon, Maxwell was the global salesman of this backdoor version, distributing it to governments and high-security institutions, including Sandia and Los Alamos National Labs in the U.S. Senator John Tower, a powerful figure in U.S. defensive circles, allegedly acted as Maxwell's conduit, securing these sales and funneling Maxwell's transactions via a Swiss bank. If true, this was espionage for hire, an Israeli spy network operating with maximal reach, and Maxwell was its courier. Whispers within the UK Foreign Office reportedly cast him as a triple agent, working for MI6, the Soviet KGB, and Mossad. Conflicting loyalties? Machiavellian genius? Or brilliant cloak and dagger chaos? The man who hobnobbed with royalty, prime ministers, and presidents may have carried secrets worth more than his tabloids. In 1986, Israeli nuclear whistleblower Mordecai Vanunu was living in London and began leaking state secrets to the Sunday Times, ready to blow the lid off Israel's secret nuclear weapons program. He had photos, he had documents, he had the story of a lifetime. But just as the Sunday Times was preparing to run the story, a rival paper, the Sunday Mirror, got hold of the photos. Instead of breaking the nuclear bombshell, they ran a hit piece discrediting Vanunu. The Mirror's owner? Robert Maxwell. According to the accounts from Seymour Hersh's The Samson Option, Mossad was tipped off by none other than Maxwell and his foreign editor, Nicholas Davies. Vanunu was soon kidnapped, taken to Israel, and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Maxwell called the accusations ludicrous, but the damage was done. Questions of his complicity went public. The story even reached the British Parliament. MP George Galloway invoked it under privilege, prompting newspapers to teeter between revelation and libel fear. Ultimately, Davies was fired, but Maxwell sued for libel. He maintained his innocence until his dramatic, watery end. In November 1991, Robert Maxwell's body was found drifting near his yacht, Lady Ghislaine, off the Canary Islands. Officially, it was ruled an accidental drowning, but alternative theories rippled up faster than waves on the water, some of which felt like the opening of a spy novel. But few chapters could match the intrigue and ambition of the one penned by Ari Ben-Menashe, an Israeli-Canadian ex-intelligence operative with a flair for explosive revelations. Ben-Menashe didn't just murmur theories. He claimed Maxwell had been taken out by Mossad because Maxwell tried to blackmail them. Here's how the story twists. Ari Ben-Menashe's story begins in Tehran, where he was born in 1951 into an Iraqi Jewish family. He rose to serve in Israel's Military Intelligence Directorate from 1977 to 1987, purportedly handling highly sensitive operations. His Persian, Arabic, and English fluency facilitated an international web of arms deals and covert information flows. In 1989, he was arrested for allegedly selling military aircraft to Iran. He said he was acting on behalf of Israel. He was acquitted in 1990, leaving behind a reputation both reviled and half-believed. His 1992 book, Prophets of War, Inside the Secret U.S.-Israeli Arms Network, paved the way for his spy whispering career. Ben-Menashe's most startling claim? Maxwell, once a valued asset of Mossad, began leveraging compromising secrets and demanding $600 million in interest on the billions he owed creditors. Authors Gordon Thomas and Martin Dillon, in their book, Robert Maxwell, Israel's Super Spy, The Life and Murder of a Media Mogul, pointed to that as the moment his relationship with Israeli intelligence turned fatal. The notion of a publisher running an entire empire, cozying up to spooks, then double-crossing them, that is intrigue personified. In the mid-1980s, nuclear technician Mordecai Vanunu blew the whistle on Israel's nuclear program. After notebooks, sketches, and photos destined for the Sunday Times arrived at Robert Maxwell's headquarters, Ben-Menashe claims Maxwell tipped off Mossad, triggering Vanunu's dramatic Mossad-facilitated abduction. The public spat allowed Armstrong-level intrigue to break into headlines, a rare fracture in Maxwell's facade of invincibility. 2 weeks after the parliamentary confrontation, on November 5, 1991, Maxwell vanished from his yacht. Found dead in the Atlantic a day later, the official verdict was accidental drowning, with heart and lung issues. But Ben-Menashe stood firm. Mossad had Maxwell terminated because he had turned on them. He had threatened to expose secrets unless paid off. Maxwell, through his lawyers and spokespeople, slammed Ben-Menashe's stories as ludicrous interventions. Hirsch's publisher even contended with forgery. Materials Ben-Menashe included were allegedly planted by conmen. In the murky world of espionage rumors, credibility is slippery. Yet, Ben-Menashe's insider background lent his claims more weight than pure conspiracy. This allegation had legs because Maxwell's intelligence connections were real. Whether KGB, MI6, or Mossad, or all three, he had depth and reach across spy circles. Vanunu's abduction had hallmarks of state action. The timing and logistics stank of Israeli intelligence orchestration. And finally, Maxwell's fall from grace coincided with the accusations. His business empire collapsed post-mortem, leaving scandal and scandal's aura behind. Ben Menashe's allegations reflect broader truths about Mossad's modus operandi. Holding embarrassing or otherwise compromising personal information about a person and using that information to blackmail them. An academic analysis even cites such operations targeting U.S. lawmakers to steer policy and secure strategic advantage. Robert Maxwell, with his media empire and backdoor power, could easily serve as both agent and target. His funeral in Jerusalem, attended by high-level Israeli officials like Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, becomes both tribute and cloak. While concrete proof is elusive, the strands of this story from a tantalizing narrative tapestry, Maxwell, a spy genius tycoon, crosses the wrong people and they erase him. Each element, Vananu, spying software, Mossad ties, sudden ending, fits. Conjecture? Yes. Compelling? Absolutely. Did the man who allegedly helped Israel's intelligence agency die at their hands? Or was it just a tragic fall at sea? The more grounded the record, the bigger the rabbit hole becomes. Robert Maxwell lived a life that felt fueled by adrenaline, the thrill of power, influence, media, and perhaps covert service. Above all, he was an enigma, perhaps working for multiple spy agencies, or merely a cruel opportunist dancing dangerously close to state secrets. Every turn of the ship he commanded, on sea or in print, left a wake of intrigue, and he would now pass these characteristics down to his personal favorite of his 9 children, the notorious Ghislaine Maxwell. While the precise moment Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell met isn't documented with an exact date, public reporting and multiple credible sources place their introduction in the late 1980s and/or early 1990s in New York City. According to several accounts, Epstein and Maxwell were publicly connected from 1991 onward, with Maxwell becoming a close companion and central figure in Epstein's personal and administrative life. The Independent and other outlets similarly described their meeting as occurring in the early 1990s within New York's elite social scene. In addition, The Guardian emphasizes that Maxwell's life in New York became intertwined with Epstein's circles during this early period, as she stepped into a role that would soon become both personal and operational. As such, let's take a brief detour and get to know Ghislaine Maxwell. Picture London in the early 1980s. Glamorous, slightly decadent, buzzing with the promise of power behind tea and tailored suits. In that world, a young woman navigated high society with elegance and calculation. Ghislaine Maxwell. But who was she before the scandal, before the public outcry and discuss? Let's step into that world where yachts were glittering playgrounds, tycoons' daughters ran football clubs, and rumors, sometimes darker than fiction, swirled just beneath the surface. Ghislaine Noelle Marion Maxwell was born on December 25, 1961, in France, the 9th child of Elizabeth Maxwell, a French Holocaust scholar, and Robert Maxwell, a British publishing entrepreneur. Growing up in Headington Hill Hall, a sprawling estate outside Oxford that doubled as the headquarters for her father's Pergamon Press, Maxwell's childhood was anything but ordinary. She attended prestigious schools, Oxford High for Girls, Edglary Hall, Headington School, and Marlborough College, before earning a degree in modern history with languages from Balliol College, Oxford, in 1985, where she rubbed shoulders with future politicos like Boris Johnson. She was raised to be a powerful woman. From an early age, Ghislaine was groomed for public life. Her intellect and poise carefully honed for the social salons and boardrooms of the elite. Meanwhile, her father made her a director of Oxford United Football Club, an unusual, but powerful, move that underscored her increasing influence. She also worked at The European, a publication established by Robert Maxwell. Ghislaine seemed poised for an independent legacy of leadership and visibility. In 1986, Robert Maxwell decided to immortalize his favorite daughter. At a Dutch shipyard, he christened his sleek new yacht the Lady Ghislaine, the boat he was on when he met his mysterious end, complete with a jacuzzi, sauna, gym, and disco. For Ghislaine, the yacht became a kind of floating palace, commanding, elusive, endlessly inviolable. She spent late 1980s summers abroad, socializing with the globe's elite under disco lights and moonlit oceans. Her father also supposedly conjured up a New York registered corporate gifts company tailor-made for her, but it never turned a profit. Still, it demonstrated how deeply intertwined Ghislaine's life and misadventures were with her father's influence. November 5th, 1990, marked a strange pivot. Ghislaine flew to New York City with a mysterious envelope from her father, apparently part of a scheme to defraud Berlitz shareholders by $200 million. Then came Robert Maxwell's 1991 acquisition of the New York Daily News. Ghislaine was dispatched to Manhattan as his emissary. Suddenly, she was rubbing elbows with big names, her London coolness transplanted into Manhattan's glittering social fray, effortlessly. In May 1991, she traveled by Concorde with her father to represent him at an event for Simon Wiesenthal, who carried on as Robert departed for Moscow. This leg of jet-set activity elevated her profile even further. Then came the storm. After Robert Maxwell passed on, Ghislaine flew immediately to handle his affairs. She even attended his state-like funeral in Jerusalem, grieving among Israeli leaders such as President Herzog and Prime Minister Shamir. The cause of death was ruled accidental drowning, but Ghislaine later remarked that she thought foul play was involved. Many agree with her. In the fallout, it emerged that Maxwell had looted $400 million from pension funds belonging to Mirror Group newspapers. The scandal uprooted his business empire and diminished the family's social standing. Her brothers, Ian and Kevin, were briefly arrested for fraud but later acquitted. Still, the scandal marked a new turning point. Ghislaine's world crumbled. By late 1992, Ghislaine relocated to New York to escape the scandal. With a £80,000 annual trust fund from her father, she settled into the Upper East Side, renting an apartment overlooking Central Park, working at a Madison Avenue real estate office, and quickly becoming a sought-after socialite. The escape was as elegant as it was deliberate. In 1996, her name made headlines for reasons both wild and disorienting. She was arrested for DUI, and the media labeled her occupation Internet Operative, an opaque title that added an intriguing tinge of espionage to her glamorous persona. No one would expect that in a few years she'd become a central figure in one of the most horrific S-trafficking scandals of modern times. Ghislaine Maxwell's pre-Epstein years read like a mysterious novel. The daughter of a media kingpin, educated at Oxford, crowned socialite, yacht heiress, and international envoy, she moved between worlds, London balls, Manhattan soirees, yacht parties, and weathered a family scandal that erased her father's empire. It's a story steeped in power and tragedy, all played out under the spotlight of high society. And for Ghislaine, it was merely the beginning of even deeper secrets into the global elite. And those deeper secrets begin with Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein's reported net worth at his 2019 arrest was at least $560 million, though it is unclear how much derived from his early Wall Street associations. His holdings include real estate across Manhattan, Palm Beach, Paris, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Epstein's rapid ascendancy from a teacher to a player in high-dollar wealth management with no visible audit trail fed speculation. In the absence of transparent records, people filled gaps with hypothesis and rumor. His intimate ties to elite figures, Wexner, Kane, Greenberg, combined with frequent global travel on a private jet, movie star clientele like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, and association with Ghislaine Maxwell intensified curiosity and suspicion. And it would all start to unravel in 2004. That year, murmurs on the winds of Palm Beach began to speak of unusual activity at Jeffrey Epstein's lavish mansion. Young women arriving and departing under murky circumstances. Fast forward a few months to March 2005, when a mother stepped forward to Florida's Palm Beach police with a chilling allegation. Her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been brought to Epstein's mansion by an older girl. There, the mother claimed, the girl had been paid $300 to undress and massage Epstein, ultimately leaving in just her underwear. The horror of it all prompted Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Reeder to commence a 13-month undercover operation that would lay bare the dark underbelly of Epstein's world. Epstein's opulent home, decked with marble and secrets, housed more than just lavish decor. Hidden cameras recorded his every move, because, according to police, Epstein might have used them to record carnal encounters as blackmail. Over 17 witnesses and 5 alleged victims came forward, verified by transcripts, trash bin searches, and photographs throughout the home. Some of those portrayed were under age 14, with others under 16. Epstein sometimes took some of these girls to his private island via his airplane, the Lolita Express. In 2002, Vicky Ward penned a Variety Fair piece on Epstein, pulling strings behind the scenes few dared to touch. When she gently probed his ties to Stephen Hoffenberg, or his notorious interest in young women, Epstein went berserk, Ward recalls. He warned her, "If there's any implication of wrongdoing, I will take legal action against you personally. I will be as harsh as I possibly can personally. Not for the magazine, but you. You shouldn't risk your future for a job." The chilling moment hinted at how Epstein wielded wealth and power. and his willingness to threaten individuals. Epstein's private Boeing 727 logged 600 flight hours a year, ferrying guests, many believed to be underage, from his Caribbean hideaways. The nickname nods to Nabokov's novel about a man obsessed with a 12-year-old, reflecting just how lurid local whispers had grown. In March 2003, Epstein took a bizarre flight with former Colombian President Andrés Pastrana, a flight allegedly at the invitation of Fidel Castro. The Miami Herald speculated that Epstein might have considered relocating to Cuba to avoid U.S. law enforcement. Pastrana later contradicted critics, denying deeper connections. But the photo of Epstein with Castro, found in his Palm Beach home, did raise some eyebrows. Nonetheless, very famous, very powerful, and influential people flew on the Lolita Express, like Bill Clinton. Flight logs show he flew on Epstein's jet at least 27 times across multiple continents, without a consistent Secret Service present. Donald Trump. His brother Mark said Donald flew numerous times on Epstein's jet. Insiders even say he flew Epstein on his own jet. And Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker took a trip to Africa together aboard the jet. Clinton's team later clarified no visits to Epstein's private island or ranch occurred. Epstein's early career entangled him with Stephen Hoffenberg, convicted Ponzi schemer and longtime Epstein associate. Hoffenberg paid Epstein $25,000 a month and gave him a $2 million loan that was never repaid. They flew together, plotted corporate raids, and, in Hoffenberger's words, Epstein was the architect of the scam. Epstein crafted a public persona as an intelligent, generous financier. Vanity Fair described him as vicious with clients, yet charming and generous to friends. He ingratiated himself into elite circles with Victoria's Secret models, made frequent appearances at glamorous parties, and mingled with foreign-born celebrities. Younger guests there recalled unsettling elements. Ghislaine Maxwell inviting Russian models dressed bizarrely, sketching the cusp of a coming scandal. Just before the raid, Epstein's assistant, former model Adriana Ross, allegedly hauled out hard drives and electronics from his mansion to protect the master's secrets. Additionally, Detective Joseph Riccari discovered an Amazon receipt listing erotica like SM-101, a realistic introduction, and Slavecraft, suggesting Epstein's access to disturbing materials. As the investigation rocked the island, the FBI stepped in, painting an even darker picture. Investigators identified 34 confirmed minors whose stories matched to disturbing detail. Later, the NPA, or Non-Prosecution Agreement, expanded that list to 40. Journalist Julie K. Brown raised the number further, identifying roughly 80 victims, with about 60 of them located and ready to tell their stories. Chief Reader put it bluntly, "This was 50-something she's and one he, and the she's all basically told the same story," he said. Misleadingly, a bizarre claim emerged that 12-year-old triplets were flown in from France, abused, and flown back the next day, all for Epstein's birthday. The allegation extended worldwide, from Brazil to former Soviet nations and Europe, with models funneled via Jean-Luc Brunel's MC2 agency, which Epstein allegedly financed. In May 2006, Palm Beach police filed a probable cause affidavit, 4 counts of unlawful contact with minors, and 1 count of abuse. By July 27, Epstein was arrested, posting a mere $3,000 bond. Yes, you heard that right. It got worse. Instead of a sweeping indictment for 50-plus victims, the grand jury, composed for capital cases only, was presented with evidence from just 2 plaintiffs. The result? A single charge of felony solicitation of prostitution, to which Epstein pleaded not guilty in August 2006. The elite legal team assembled included luminaries like Roy Black, Gerald Lefcourt, Alan Dershowitz, and former U.S. Solicitor General Ken Starr. Even cognitive scientist Steven Pinker chipped in. The plea deal was later denounced by victims and advocates as the deal of the century. In July 2006, after the Palm Beach investigation, the FBI launched a covert probe dubbed Operation Leap Year. The moniker signaled a bold new leap in federal scrutiny, a meticulous, shadowy inquiry gathering evidence, wiretaps, witness interviews, and surveillance of Jeffrey Epstein's illicit empire. This was the moment it could have toppled powerful figures. By June 2007, the FBI had drafted a 53-page federal indictment, laden with allegations that could have led to decades behind bars for Epstein. Yet, it never saw the light of court. The investigation abruptly halted. Enter Alexander Acosta, then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Facing mounting evidence, he struck an extraordinary non-prosecution agreement, negotiated with the help of powerhouse lawyer Alan Dershowitz, that granted Epstein immunity from all federal criminal charges for himself, 4 named co-conspirators, and even any unnamed potential co-conspirators. Why did Acosta craft such a lenient, smothering arrangement? He later claimed that he was told, multiple times, that Epstein belonged to intelligence, was above his pay grade, and that the file should simply be left alone. Conchita Sarnoff, author of Traffic King, added that Acosta felt cannibalized by Epstein's top-tier legal team, fearing his own career would be destroyed if he pushed too hard. Epstein accepted the deal. He would plead guilty to 2 state-level felony prostitution charges, serve 18 months in a Palm Beach jail, register as an offender, and pay restitution to roughly 3 dozen victims identified by the FBI. This ended the federal investigation. But here's where the deal turned toxic. It was secret. Acosta and the prosecutors never informed the victims about it, urging them instead to have patience. Federal Judge Kenneth Mara would later rule that this secrecy violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. A Department of Justice internal probe termed Acosta's decision poor judgment. The non-prosecution agreement was eventually labeled by an appeals court as a national disgrace. On June 30th, 2008, Epstein was sentenced to 18 months, but he would serve less in jail than many traffic offenders. Housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade, he had special privileges. For example, work release, up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, despite policy that such offenders serving under 10 months could not be granted such releases. Epstein also enjoyed unlocked cell doors, access to a TV-equipped attorney room, and, eventually, the infirmary. Epstein created a foundation right before reporting in for his sentence, dissolved it after release, and paid the sheriff's office $128,000 for his dedicated office and extra services. He also had a personal driver assigned to shuttle him between jail, his office, and appointments. It all seems so unfair. Luxury in lockup while victims waited in silence. Epstein served almost 13 months, released on July 22, 2009, then given 1 year of house arrest. But, of course, this wasn't your typical house arrest. He was allowed frequent trips on his corporate jet to Manhattan and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He also went on shopping sprees and exercise walks around Palm Beach. When Epstein was rearrested in July 2019 on new trafficking charges, Acosta's past deal surfaced, all the way up to him. Acosta, by then Secretary of Labor under Trump, resigned immediately on July 19, 2019. As the public roared, victims demanded justice. Bradley Edwards, representing teenage survivors, filed suit to unseal the non-prosecution agreement, forcing the deal into the light. Civil suits argued that the non-prosecution agreement violated victims' rights under federal law. Judges agreed, ruling in favor of the survivors, and reaffirming that justice cannot be negotiated in secret. Between Epstein's 2007 plea deal and his explosive 2019 arrest, he quietly evaded truth by hiring Steve Bannon, yes, that Steve Bannon, to coach him for a planned televised mea culpa. Journalist Michael Wolff, later famous for Fire and Fury, assisted behind the scenes. Epstein rehearsed his defense, tailoring messages for maximum sympathy, with Bannon preparing to weather hostile questioning. But the interview never happened. What recordings remain are in Bannon's hands, adding another locked door in Epstein's secret empire. When Epstein returned to the U.S. on July 6, 2019, he walked into a trap. FBI and NYPD agents from the Crimes Against Children Task Force stormed his New Jersey arrival and raided his Manhattan townhouse with a barrage of warrants. Inside, they found not just evidence, they found photo albums crammed with images of underage girls, hidden cameras, and more. In a safe, $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, and a fraudulent Austrian passport featuring Epstein's photo, but another name. The passport revealed travel to countries like Saudi Arabia, the UK, and Spain under a fabricated identity to evade pursuers. Epstein's attorneys later claimed the bogus passport was for protection against kidnap plot threats. Plausible or not, it reeked of espionage-grade absurdity. On July 8, 2019, prosecutors in Manhattan hit Epstein with federal trafficking charges, alleging dozens of underage girls were trafficked into his mansions. Judge Kenneth Mara, who previously designated Epstein's 2007 plea deal a legal disgrace, would decide if the old non-prosecution agreement still had any power. Epstein offered $100 million in bail and house arrest in Manhattan, but U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman denied him, citing a clear danger to the public and flight risk. Tragically, or conveniently, Epstein died in jail before a proper bail hearing could go forward. On July 23, 2019, at approximately 1:30 a.m., prison guards at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan made a chilling discovery. Jeffrey Epstein lay injured and semi-conscious on the floor of his cell with marks around his neck. His cellmate, Nicholas Tartaglione, a former New York City cop awaiting trial for multiple murders, was questioned and denied any involvement. Guards suspected an unalive attempt, but some sources told NBC News it could have been staged, or that Epstein might have been assaulted. He was placed on unalive watch, but shockingly, just 6 days later, on July 29th, he was transferred to a special housing unit and taken off unalive watch, with reports that he seemed to be in good spirits. The jail had assured the Justice Department that Epstein would have a cellmate and be monitored every 30 minutes. But those protocols evaporated on the night of his death. On August 9th, his cellmate was removed with no replacement assigned. CCTV cameras near his cell failed, and the two guards on duty reportedly fell asleep for about 3 hours, falsifying records afterward. At 6:30 a.m., guards found Epstein unresponsive, kneeling, a bedsheet ligature around his neck. Underscoring the high stakes, Barr immediately requested an Inspector General investigation. In June 2023, the Justice Department's Inspector General released a damning 114-page report detailing rampant failure at the correctional facility. Negligence, misconduct, and job performance failures had created a setting where Epstein could end his life, prompting calls for jail reforms. The watchdog explicitly debunked theories of foul play. These operational failures weren't isolated. A recent AP investigation reviewed 344 prison unalives over 8 years. Investigators found major oversight gaps: old cameras, staff shortages, missed mental health assessments, and failed check-ins, mirroring the conditions that enabled Epstein's passing. On August 11th, following a 4-hour autopsy, the medical examiner ruled Epstein's cause of death in unalive by hanging. Yet, troubling detail emerged. Epstein's hyoid bone was broken, a fracture that appears more often in homicidal strangulation than in unaliving oneself, especially in younger men. Forensic pathologist Michael Baden, brought in by Epstein's lawyers, argued the injury suggested possible homicide. In July 2025, the Department of Justice released nearly 11 hours of surveillance video from the night of Epstein's death to strengthen the self-unalive ruling. The footage showed Epstein being escorted to his cell at 7:49 p.m., secured by 10:40 p.m., and found dead the next morning. But CBS News flagged inconsistencies. The footage looked like a screen recording with visible cursor menus, had blind spots, skips, and odd aspect ratio changes. Forensic experts even suggested a mysterious orange blob in the video could be a person, not a linen-carrying official. The blend of shocking jailhouse incompetence, a high-profile inmate with dark connections, and a suspicious broken neck bone, a perfect storm for memes, documentaries, public suspicion, and historians' lullaby videos. Few believed his death at first. polls showed only 16% believed it was self-inflicted. Jeffrey Epstein's jailhouse end wasn't a tragedy. It was a corporate-level failure of prison healthcare, staffing, and basic humanity. The official line is self-unalive, but anomalies linger. Broken cameras, malfunctioning protocols, contested autopsy results, and bizarre video inconsistencies continue to fuel both legal scrutiny and public fascination. Epstein's network extended to trusted recruiters: Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, Nadia Markinkova, and Haley Robeson, who were all listed as unindicted co-conspirators in the 2007 deal. Judge Nathan, in Maxwell's 2022 judgment, called Kellen a criminally responsible participant. One jaw-dropping claim by Politico: Epstein ran a recruitment operation at Royal Palm Beach High, paying teens $20 to recruit their peers. One victim alleged she was purchased at age 15 from her Yugoslavian family and later trafficked into Epstein's orbit. Many Americans felt betrayed when Donald Trump's probe into Jeffrey Epstein during the first half of 2025 turned up nothing. It seems that, even in death, Jeffrey Epstein still controls the world's most powerful leaders. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Historian's Lullaby. May you now rest easy and wake up ready to conquer your day. Till next time, good night.